You know what you get when you combine dubbing, a hook, and some wire? One pretty good little scud pattern. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Hi everyone, I'm Phil Rowley and welcome to my YouTube channel. If you've been here before, thanks for dropping by once again. If this is your first time visiting, I provide fly tying and fly fishing video content that I hope makes your next day on the water just that little bit more productive. Trout love to eat scuds. They eat them by the truckload. They're rich in calories and they really help trout pack on the weight. But flies to imitate them don't need to be complicated. Let me show you the Dubbed Scud, a fly that uses wire, a hook, and some dubbing to make one pretty good little scud pattern that has served me well for many, many years. Alright, so we're going to tie a Dubbed Scud. Real simple pattern. It's great when fish are on really tiny scuds, late fall, early spring, basically anytime. So I've got a Daiichi 1530 number 14. You could tie these 16s, 12s, but 14 is a great size for these tiny little scuds. We're just going to put some olive tying thread onto the hook and get that dressed. Trim away the excess. Take that thread down, come back up near the hook eye. We're going to put a little twinkle in the tail, and that twinkle is in the form of some Mirage Flash. I'm just going to use some light done pearl. You could use pearl, you could use olive. Don't get too hung up on the color, it's just to provide a little bit of flash. So I've taken 2 strands and then doubled them over. Get them tied in, fold the material that's in front of the tying point back, gather them, and then take them slightly down into the bend. And then we're going to come back up. And this is just to, when scuds are swimming, they swim predominantly straight. I'm just going to trim that to a little stub of a tail. It's just to, again, make this fly stand out in the crowd. Because that's when people often get intimidated fishing scuds, so it's a good idea to have your fly have a little bit of something to stand out and make the fish notice it. We generally fish this pretty brisk too. A very short 1 to 2 inch choppy strip retrieve. Again, the movement of the fly and a little flash to it to stand out. For a rib, we're going to use some small hot orange UTC wire. You could use copper as well. You could use chartreuse, but I like the orange in there because there's any pregnant scuds in there that have a little bit of an orange hue to them because of the egg pouch the females carry along the undersides of their body. This is just going to give that give a little bit of orange to it. And now we're just going to come forward. We're going to form a dubbing loop. So what I'm going to do for the body is, that's the fly's name, it's called a Dubbed Scud. It's just dubbing. Nothing else, no shellback, just dubbing, and we're going to dub it and trim it to look like a scud. So you got lots of options to use. I used to use seals for a lot. Dark olive is a good color for scuds, particularly in darker algae type water with generally match the weed coloration. In clearer water, I might go with a light olive. You could certainly use some squirrel or rabbit dubbing as well. I think for this one we're just going to go with the light olive. It's a good color, and we're just going to get some ready and pull out. Now we're going to form our dubbing loop. It doesn't have to be a big loop, so I'm just making about a 3-inch dubbing loop. Pull it down, back up to the hook shank, start securing the thread back. That's going to close the dubbing loop nice and tight where it touches the shank. Going to go right down to the base of the tail, come back up right at the hook eye and just let that thread hang. I'm going to put my dubbing twister in. Lots of different ones you can use out there, and I'm just going to take little pinches of this ice dub. Doesn't have to be much, and just I put it in at the base and slide it up into position. So open the loop, slide up, and just trying to get nice even consistency in the dubbing, meaning that it's pretty even along the length. It's not You know, push this up a little bit further, but it's not all, you know, bare spots and then a big application of dubbing, so we're just going to bring this up. I'm only tying on 14, so we don't need a lot. And the reason I like the dubbing loop is it's durable, and it just makes a really nice spiky effect. You could certainly just twist this dubbing onto the tying thread if you prefer to do it that way and brush it out, but I'm just going to spin this up nice and tight. Give it a good spin. Nice and tight when my fibers radiate out, sort of 90 degrees to the loop, and the loop has a little elasticity to it now. That's when you know it's tight. When I release the pressure, it kind of has some spring to it. And I'm just going to take my dubbing brush and then just brush out and tease out as much of this dubbing as I can. And then treat this dubbing noodle now like a hackle. So you're just going to get the first couple of wraps in where the thread is bare. I always like to keep, whenever I'm dubbing, keep the first portion of that dubbing noodle bare thread so I can really aim the dubbing. I want this dubbing to start right at the base of the tail, so I can sort of tread water, if you will, with the thread. Get that first wrap, and then just come up with my thumb and forefinger, and like a hackle, I'm just going to sweep these fibers back. I just spent all that effort trying to free them up when I dub them. I don't want to trap them back along the shank. So I want a nice scruffy looking body that I can shape here. This fly is super simple, but served me well. I first, if you got my first book, Fly Patterns for Still Waters, which sadly I believe is out of print now, this was one of my favorites. This is probably my favorite small, when they're on tiny scuds or small scuds, 14s, 16s, 18s, is this. We don't need to tie very complex flies. So I just tie that dubbing noodle off, come in, trim off the excess, a couple more wraps for security. I'm going to try and, I've got tension on the thread so it doesn't slide out, but I'm going to try and start pulling and training that dubbing to come down. Right now it looks like a big hairy mess, which is exactly what we want. And now we're just going to come through and sort of work that small gold wire, give it some segmentation, and just kind of stroke. I'm trying not to trap fibers in if I can. It's not the end of the world, but I'm going to use the dubbing to suggest the legs and of the natural scud. Come up, a couple of wraps over the top, a couple of wraps in front, build a little head, thumbnail right on the tie-off, break away the excess. Going to whip finish, so I'm just going to put a little bit of brushable super glue onto the tying thread. So I don't want to get it in the dubbing, don't want to, you know, come in with my brush like this and risk getting it in the dubbing. It's far easier just to coat that tying thread and let the thread carry the super glue where it needs to be. So it bonds everything, and then just a 3 to 5 turn whip finish. Snug that up, trim that off, come in and, you know, whoops, a lot of times, move the visor back up, just take your, and just use the back of your finger or your thumb to brush against, and now you're going to come in and kind of shape everything. So I'm going to trim everything off on the top, come in just below the level of the hook, and I'm just going to trim along the sides a little bit. And if there's any errant fibers, I can see a couple of them shining at me there, and just a couple at the back here I missed. Blow off the remnants off the, there's a couple of wild ones here. This is just me being kind of fussy. It's kind of like deer hair. Trim it to your heart's content. It's a simple fly, and I'll take 35 minutes to show you how to trim dubbing. But that's it. It's very simple. The Dubbed Scud.